In 1984, the cinematic world was gently yet delightfully shaken when the film Police Academy was officially released. No one expected that a story about a group of misfits and clumsy recruits gathering to uphold justice would create such an explosive box office phenomenon. The work was not only a roaring commercial success, spawning a series of sequels, but also became a vibrant, laughter-filled part of the memories of an entire generation of 80s and 90s audiences. Characters like the giant Hightower, the soft-spoken Hooks, or the gun-obsessed Tackleberry became close friends through the small screen. But when the stage lights went out, when the audience's laughter subsided, those actors returned to real lives full of twists and turns. Decades have passed, and cruel time has carved indelible marks onto their fates. Behind those classic comedic faces lie silent tragedies, extreme loneliness, and poignant departures. Today, let us temporarily set aside the laughter to embark on a journey full of contemplation, looking back at the ups and downs of the souls who created the legend of Police Academy. Bubba Smith as Moses Hightower. In Police Academy, the character Moses Hightower appeared as an immovable fortress possessing the gentlest of hearts. With his colossal stature and extraordinary strength, Hightower was a reliable support for his teammates. But it was his calmness and rare smile that truly endeared him to the audience. Taking on this role at age 39, Bubba Smith, a legendary NFL football icon, made a spectacular transformation, shedding the ferocity of the gridiron to become a gentle giant on screen. Bubba's career thereafter was tied to the image of that quiet hero. He became a cultural icon, proof that muscular strength could go hand in hand with subtle humor. However, behind the aura of a movie star and a sports legend was a private life full of hidden pain. Far from the cheers of the crowd, Bubba chose a heartbreakingly solitary life in Los Angeles. He did not marry, had no children, and had to face the brutal price of past glory, chronic injuries from his football days. The savage collisions of yesteryear left severe after-effects on his brain and body, forcing Bubba to rely on painkillers constantly. The man who was once a terror on the field withdrew into depression, letting illness erode his magnificent body day by day. The most thought-provoking aspect is the cruel contrast between his role and his life. While Hightower on film was always surrounded by teammates and used his strength to protect others in real life, Bubba Smith fought physical pain alone without a caring hand. The image of the Man of Steel became a psychological burden he could not shake off. Then the journey of that giant had to stop in absolute silence. On August 3, 2011, Bubba Smith was found dead at his home at the age of 66. He passed away due to acute drug intoxication and heart disease alone, with no one by his side. Autopsy results later showed he suffered from CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a painful reminder of the price of glory he paid with his own life. Marion Ramsey as Laverne Hooks. If Hightower was strength, then Laverne Hooks was the voice of the small and meek Marion Ramsey at age 37, carved her name into film history with the role of the timid female officer who possessed a distinctive high-pitched voice. Her scream, "Don't move, dirtbag," became a classic, turning Hooks from a supporting character into an indispensable soul of the franchise. Marion acted so excellently that audiences believed that was her true self, a weak woman hiding an extraordinary inner power. However, the dazzling success of Laverne Hooks inadvertently became a gilded cage imprisoning Marion's career. Few knew that behind that squeaky voice was a truly talented Broadway artist who had shone brightly in the musical Hello, Dolly. But a cruel Hollywood could not look beyond that defining role. She was typecast, rarely given roles with depth, and her diverse singing and acting talents were gradually forgotten. Marion's personal life also carried the sadness of solitude. After a broken marriage, she closed her heart, living without children or relatives in Los Angeles. There is a haunting connection between Marion and Hooks on film. Hooks found her voice to assert herself, but in real life, Marion Ramsey seemed to lose herself in the overwhelming shadow of the character. She lived a quiet life, hiding her feelings behind a gentle smile, as her close friend, Nell Carter, once shared. And then the train of the talented artists. Life reached its final station on January 7th, 2021. Marion Ramsey passed away after a short illness at the age of 73. She left with a modest fortune, but the greatest tragedy was not material. It was the regret for a talent that never had the chance to be fully recognized by the world outside the shadow of Police Academy. David Graff as Eugene Tackleberry, mentioning Police Academy. No one can forget Eugene Tackleberry, the gun-crazy cop with a warm heart and absolute loyalty. David Graff, then 34 years old, breathed explosive energy into this character, turning a somewhat eccentric role into a symbol of humor and masculinity. Tackleberry was the role of a lifetime, bringing laughter to millions and serving as a launchpad for David Graff's name. He continued to dedicate himself to the arts, appearing in many other prestigious films and becoming an active representative of the Screen Actors Guild, SAG, fighting tirelessly for the rights of his colleagues. But behind that strong exterior and radiant smile were the struggles of an artist yearning for more recognition. Despite a stable career and a happy family with his wife, actress Katharine Graff, and 2 sons, David always carried an invisible fear. He feared being typecast, feared he would forever remain Tackleberry in the eyes of the audience without ever reaching the status of a true star. Work pressure and the desire to prove himself caused him to overwork sometimes, neglecting his own health, even though he was a pillar for both his family and the acting community. Fate played a cruel joke, creating a heartbreaking contrast. On screen, Tackleberry was always ready to face any danger with heavy firepower, but in life, David Graff collapsed before an invisible enemy that no weapon could stop. Tragedy struck on April 7th, 2001, just 9 days before his 51st birthday. While attending his brother-in-law's wedding in Arizona, David Graff suffered a sudden heart attack and passed away right there. His abrupt departure left a huge shock for his young wife and 2 young children, leaving behind unfinished artistic ambitions and a Tackleberry role that will forever remain an immortal legend in regret. George Gaines as Eric Lassard, in the chaotic picture of Police Academy Commander Eric Lassard, was a brilliant highlight, with dreamy eyes, naive expressions, and adorably senile antics. George Gaines successfully portrayed a leader who was both funny and warm. Taking the role at age 67, George brought the elegant demeanor of a gentleman to the character, becoming the soul, the old father of the entire series. But few knew that before becoming that jovial commander, George Gaines had lived an extraordinary life with historical highs and lows. Born in Helsinki, served in the Royal Netherlands Navy during World War II, and was a talented opera singer. George Gaines' life seemed fulfilled with a long career and a happy marriage to actress Alan Ann McClary. But fate dealt his family a fatal blow in 1989, while the film series was still at its peak. His son Matthew, a promising Olympic athlete, died in a tragic car accident in India. The pain of losing a child left a deep wound in the old father's heart. Many noticed that after that incident, though he kept a smile on his lips, George's eyes became sorrowful, and he gradually withdrew from the glamorous outside world. The connection between the role and his life bore the color of humane concealment. If Lassard on film was always optimistic to the point of foolishness to bring joy, then in real life, George Gaines used calmness and kindness to mask an unceasing pain of loss. He lived his final years in simplicity, as his memory faded and his health declined, but the dignity of a gentleman remained intact. The journey of that respected commander closed. On February 15th, 2016, George Gaines passed away peacefully at his daughter's home at the age of 98. He departed, leaving behind a massive artistic legacy and a lesson on how to smile through life's greatest tragedies. Deborah Lee Scott as Violet Fackler. Although she only took on the supporting role of Violet Fackler, the eccentric and impulsive wife in the first movie, Deborah Lee Scott left a deep impression, thanks to her natural and charming acting style. At 31, she was a familiar face of the golden age of American sitcoms with a vibrant, appearance and eyes that knew how to smile. Deborah Lee's career later shifted to becoming a talent agent in New York, where she found joy in supporting other artists. Her life, though not too noisy, passed with the ups and downs of a woman seeking happiness after an incomplete first marriage. However, Deborah Lee Scott's life was a heartbreaking testament to how cruel fate can be. After breakups, she found true love with John Dennis Levi, a Port Authority police officer in New York. They painted dreams of a happy future together. But then the horrific events of September 11th, 2001 took away the person she loved most. Her fiancé sacrificed his life in the Twin Towers terrorist attack, and along with his departure, Deborah Lee's heart shattered. According to relatives, she never recovered from that shock. The pain of loss pushed her onto a path of alcoholism and severe depression, turning the radiant girl of yesteryear into a ghost of her former self. The role of Violet Fackler on film was a woman who was a bit crazy but always full of life energy, completely contrasting with Deborah Lee's final years, withering away in loneliness and alcohol. She lived her remaining days in desperate longing for her lost lover. And then the tragedy came to a quiet end. Just days after her 52nd birthday, Deborah Lee Scott passed away in her sleep at her home in Florida in 2005. The cause was complications from cirrhosis, the consequence of years drowning in misery. Her story is the saddest low note in the score of Police Academy, a reminder that sometimes wounds of the heart are more dangerous than any physical disease. Ted Ross as Captain Reed. Captain Reed in Police Academy, though only a supporting role, was given an unforgettable authority and weight by Ted Ross's presence. With a booming voice and sharp eyes, Ted Ross embodied the image of a seasoned police officer. But few knew that before donning that uniform, Ted Ross was a shining star on the Broadway stage. He won a prestigious Tony Award for his role as the lion in the musical The Wiz, a role he brilliantly reprised on the big screen alongside legends Michael Jackson and Diana Ross. Ted Ross possessed a powerhouse voice and an innate ability to command the stage, nurtured in the jazz nightclubs where his mother used to work. Although his talent was undeniable, Ted Ross' cinematic path was not paved with roses. Hollywood seemed unable to fully utilize his potential, often assigning him stereotypical supporting roles. Frustration in his career resonated with turbulence in his personal life. A broken marriage left him with many emotional wounds, causing him to become withdrawn and emotionally distant. Old friends spoke of the lavish parties he used to throw. But behind that excitement was a lonely soul, always yearning to be understood and properly recognized. Late in life, he returned to his hometown of Dayton, opening a jazz club to find the original joy of his life in music. Sadly, the powerful role of Captain Reed on film contrasted completely with the fragility of Ted Ross in his final years. A stroke in 1998 took away his health and his God-given voice, turning the multi-talented artist into a frail patient. He had to fight against the after-effects of the disease for 4 long years. That promising yet unfinished journey stopped on September 3rd, 2002. Ted Ross passed away at Good Samaritan Hospital at the age of 68. He left behind a modest estate and an artistic legacy undervalued compared to its true worth. A sad low note for a great talent of the American theater stage. George R. Robertson as Chief Henry J. Hurst. Throughout 6 films, Police Chief Henry J. Hurst, played by George R. Robertson, was the embodiment of old-school authority filled with humanity. Initially, the character appeared strict, grumpy, and always suspicious of the chaotic recruits. But gradually, that gruffness gave way to humorous resignation, finally silent support for his subordinates. George, with his kindly face and poised demeanor, made Hurst lovable like a strict but forgiving grandfather in a family. In real life, George was a diligent Canadian artist who dedicated his life to the arts with rare humility, having appeared in Oscar-nominated works like JFK or Norma Ray. However, when the stage lights dimmed, George R. Robertson's life took on the gray shade of loneliness. Although his career was long and respected, his personal life was incomplete. 2 broken marriages left large voids in his soul, causing him to gradually drift away from his family, especially in his twilight years. Relatives recounted that he often lived alone in his home in Toronto, sometimes haunted by the feeling of being forgotten. The feeling of an old artist watching the cinematic world gradually abandon him. Although the role of Hearst brought him the affection of global audiences, it could not fill the emptiness in a house devoid of loved ones. The contrast between film and George's life is worth pondering. On film, Chief Hearst was always surrounded by noisy and loyal subordinates, never truly alone. In real life, George had to face the silence of old age. He lived his final years like a hermit in the heart of the city, quietly observing the world of which he was once a brilliant part. The journey of the respected police chief closed on January 29, 2023. He passed away in a hospital at the age of 89, taking with him a fortune accumulated from art, but more importantly, taking the silence of a life that gave its all and then quietly left when the line between fame and solitude had blurred. Andrew Rubin as George Martin. In the first Police Academy released in 1984, Andrew Rubin played George Martin, the handsome romantic recruit with a charming smile who always got entangled in laughable romantic troubles. With his bright appearance and natural acting, Andrew Rubin was expected to become a big star, a new sex symbol of Hollywood. The role of Martin seemed like the perfect launchpad, promising to open a brilliant future for the actor who graduated from the prestigious American Academy of Dramatic Arts audiences, loved Martinez's charm, and believed Andrew Rubin would go far. But the harsh reality of Hollywood did not indulge him. Instead of becoming a stepping stone, the role of George Martin became the solitary peak of Andrew's career. After the film opportunities became scarce, he was pushed into faded supporting roles and gradually disappeared from the public radar. A career that did not meet expectations caused Andrew to retreat into the shadows. Few knew that behind the gallant exterior of yesteryear was a silent battle lasting decades with nicotine addiction. Smoke became a friend but also an enemy, eroding his health day by day. He lived a reclusive life, rarely sharing details about his private affairs, finding joy in writing and painting, staying away from the noise of the cinema capital that had once promised him so much. There is a tragic contrast between the character and the real man. George Martin on film was a ladies' man, always surrounded by beauties and excitement. Conversely, Andrew Rubin in real life chose solitude as a companion in his final years. The aura of the hot boy role from the past could not salvage a career sinking into oblivion and a body under attack by disease. His story ended in silence without fanfare. On October 5, 2015, Andrew Rubin passed away in Los Angeles from lung cancer at the age of 69. He departed carrying the sadness of a star extinguished too soon. A talent that never had a second chance to shine as brightly as the smile of George Martin all those years ago. Doug Lennox as gang leader. In the memories of Police Academy audiences, Doug Lennox appears as a nightmare with his role as the brutal gang leader, the main antagonist in the first film. With cold eyes, a raspy voice, and a terrifying appearance, Doug successfully portrayed the face of evil, making viewers both hate and fear him. But that was just the perfect shell of a talented actor. In real life, Doug Lennox was a completely opposite extreme. He was a learned intellectual, a veteran broadcaster, and the author of the famous book, Now You Know, an encyclopedia answering curiosities about the world. He was a lover of knowledge, yearning for understanding, and possessed a sensitive artistic soul. However, that versatility seemed to become the tragedy of his life. Despite participating in dozens of television and film productions, Doug never escaped the shadow of villainous roles or faded supporting parts. He felt pigeonholed, his talent and intellect ignored by Hollywood. His private life was also tinged with sadness. With 2 failed marriages, close associates said Doug struggled with prolonged bouts of depression, haunted by the thought that the entertainment industry had squeezed him dry and then abandoned him. He lived his final days in the gloomy feeling of a talented man born at the wrong time. The contrast between the role and Doug Lennox's life is the clearest proof of the cruelty of prejudice. On screen, he was a fire-breathing gang leader, but in real life, he was a lonely scholar dying gradually in oblivion. He did not die in a gunfight or a purge like his character, but departed in a peaceful yet solitary sleep. On November 28, 2015, Doug Lennox passed away in Toronto at the age of 77 due to complications from pneumonia. He left behind a fortune of knowledge through his book pages, but took to the grave the sadness of a villain on screen who was a gentle, knowledgeable, and utterly lonely man in reality. Dar Robinson as Thug in Plaid. In the first installment of Police Academy, Dar Robinson appeared only fleetingly as a thug in a plaid shirt, a minor role serving as a backdrop for the main character's antics. Audiences at the time probably saw only a rough face, a typical bad boy of the 80s American streets, but few suspected that the man taking on that faded supporting role was a living legend, a true king in the world of stuntmen. Dar Robinson was not an ordinary actor. He was the man who broke 19 world records and performed 21 unprecedented stunts in history, from jumping off the CN Tower 700 feet high to free-falling from a helicopter. Dar's life was a series of moments dancing with death. He lived among air mattresses, cars flying over the Grand Canyon, and calculations detailed to the millimeter to cheat death. His career was so brilliant and bold that people called him the man who never broke a bone, because in 13 years of performing the craziest stunts, he never suffered a serious injury. However, behind that bravery, friends said, Dar always lived with a vague obsession about death, a silent acceptance of the fate of those who challenge limits. He went through a broken marriage and carried the anxiety of a single father wanting to protect his children from the overwhelming shadow of the danger he pursued. The connection between the role and Dar Robinson's life is a painfully ironic paradox. On screen, he played a street thug easily caught by police, but in real life, he was a Superman invincible to death, defying heights. Yet destiny chose the cruelest script for the end of this legend. Not from a skyscraper or a massive explosion. Dar fell in a simple motorcycle accident that was almost unbelievable. On November 21st, 1986, while performing a basic motorcycle run on the set of $1 Million Mystery, a scene not even considered a stunt, he lost control and plunged off a cliff. The medical team had left, earlier thinking the dangerous part was over. Dar Robinson died instantly at the age of 39, leaving behind a great legacy and an unceasing torment about the fragility of human life even for the strongest.